time ago, Dr. Francisco Lasso wrote of our guest today, "A star was born in the Goa firmament, the Nightingale of Goa." Conferred the Ustad Bismillah Khan Yuva Puraskar by the Sangeet Natak Academy in 2016 and presented with the Yuva Srujan Puraskar by the Government of Goa in 2011, rated as the best Indian fadishta of all time. You may have seen her perform and been mesmerized by her renditions at various world-class stages in Goa, the rest of India and abroad. Please join me in welcoming Sonia Shirsat in conversation with us today. Welcome, Sonia. It's a pleasure to have you here, an honor to have you here, and thank you for coming on our show.
Pleasure's all mine. Thank you so much.
We know the Sonia Shirsat of the golden voice, the beautiful smile. Today we are hoping to get to know you a little bit as you know and see yourself. Yeah. Since we know you best because of your music, the Fado in particular, would you tell us how your love for and your relationship with the music, the Fado, and how that came about, and also about being a global ambassador for Fado?
Fado came quite late in my life, actually.
Okay.
Because prior to Fado, I was singing other things. I was singing in English, I was singing in Konkani. Before English, I was singing in Hindi as a child. So Fado came at, I think I was 23. I was already I'd already graduated and I was doing my law.
Okay.
So it's only then that I chose to walk the path of the Fado. Prior to that, I had heard the Fado at home because my mother used to sing the Fado, and on one of her trips to Portugal, she had brought a lot of Fados by Amalia, CDs, because prior to that, the only things available were LPs, and then there was a big gap. So, so she would constantly play the Fado at home in the 90s, but I didn't try singing the Fado till 2003. In 2002, actually, I won the Venkantar, the Portuguese singing competition that's organized by Rosary College and Fundação Oriente. But I won it not with a Fado. I won it with a ballad, a modern ballad, but that was not a Fado.
Okay.
So even there, I chose to be away from the Fado.
Okay.
So only in 2003.
Oh, okay. Now, what does music do for you then? And given that Fado came so late to you, how did you get drawn towards that form of expression?
Well, I think throughout my life, I was singing different types of music forms, different languages, because I enjoyed singing.
Right.
So singing was probably my favorite hobby as I grew. In a little town of Ponda, very Hindu-oriented, given my background of my parents' mixed marriage. I was exposed to a lot of Hindi music, a lot of old Hindi music.
Right.
Also a lot of Konkani music, because Papa had old LPs of Lorna, of the old ones, not the recorded ones. And he used to play that. Every morning he would get up and play music loud. I guess all the neighbors also would be disturbed, or I don't know if they enjoyed it. But that was his habit. So I listened to a lot of that music, and I always tried to sing the music I heard or the songs I heard. I never went to any training, neither Western or Indian music. So there wasn't any music classes or singing classes or that practice that I did. I just sang the songs I heard, you know. So at a young age, I think I was seven or 8, there was this Hindi movie that was released, Qayamat Se Qayamat Tak. Qayamat Se Qayamat Tak was a very, very important film because it launched the career of Amir Khan. It launched the career of Juhi Chawla. It launched the music, I believe, of Nadeem Shravan. And it also launched the singer Udit Narayan.
Was that his
So
first?
yeah, it was his big first hit, I believe. And it also launched me because Papa Kehte Hain was the song that at that young age I used to sing on stage in Ponda. At some Sarvajanik Ganeshotsav, you know, whatever little functions that were there in our town. And even in school, in St. Mary's or whatever. And that's how I started singing on stage.
Okay.
And then throughout my student life, it was more of competitions.
Yeah.
It was, and more of competitions in school, choir singing, hymns for mass and whatever in school. And then we had the cable channels that came in, and I think around 1992,
yes.
yeah. So I was about 12 at that time. And then I totally switched to English music, because till then I didn't have much of an exposure to English music except for ABBA or maybe Jim Reeves that my dad played. So then came in Mariah Carey and Whitney Houston, Celine Dion, MLTR, Bryan Adams. So these were all names and songs, Toni Braxton, and voices that I heard, I learned again. Then I started singing. So there was a switch from Hindi and Konkani to English. And by then I was completing school, and then all the English competitions, singing competitions. So it took, you know, a competition sort of a phase in my student life. And I finished my graduation in commerce. And when I was doing my law, LLB, that's when I joined a band called Status 4, based in Margao.
Okay.
So that happened in 2002. And that was the end of all my competitions. I mean, majority of the competitions, I couldn't. But I did take part in French Nightingale, which was organized by Alliance Française earlier. And I was in the top 5 of India in 2001, I think. Or 2000, I think in the year 2000. And so in 2001, I was sent to to France for a month.
Oh, nice.
So that was a very nice thing. I enjoyed the trip and all that. And when I came back, I saw this advertisement of the Portuguese singing competition. So I said, okay, now French is done, now it's Portuguese. So that's when I took part in Venkantar and I won. So it was always a hobby, and then it went into competitions, and then it turned into a career. That's how music, sort of, took root. Yeah, exactly.
Okay. Now, you've received numerous awards on the state scale, on the national stage. 2011, 2016, many in between and many since. So can you tell us about the journey through that period and your feelings with awards then? And then I'll come to my next question, but your feelings with awards then.
Who doesn't feel nice to get an award?
Sure.
Yeah, I mean, even if you, award is nothing but recognition for what you've done. So if you've cooked a dish at home, and if it's not appreciated, you don't feel nice. The appreciation is an award.
Yeah.
So it always felt nice. In competitions, to win them was always fun. But once the competition phase stopped and it was just career, it feels nice because it sort of makes you realize that whatever you do is being observed, is being watched and taken into account by someone somewhere.
Yeah.
So it feels nice because sometimes you just keep on doing your work, and as artists sometimes we get so much into a particular project that sometimes we do lose track also. You know. But it's nice when somebody recognizes it, and it was lovely to receive awards. I've received awards in all different areas. So it's an award in the Konkani area. I have won the best singer from Theatre Academy a couple of times, best duet a couple of times. I got the Lullaby award, which is quite respected in the Konkani circles. The Orchid award for women who stand out in their career. I've got the ALL, All Ladies League Woman of the Decade award in the last decade. So these are awards in different other fields, apart from, of course, the serious ones that you've mentioned. The highest award given in the youth category by the government of Goa, Yuva Srujan Puraskar, in the music category. And of course, a dream to receive the National Sangeet Natak Academy Ustad Bismillah Khan Yuva Puraskar. So yeah, it feels nice, and who doesn't feel nice about it?
That's true. At the same time, I think it's been written that you have everything that makes you the stuff of legends, that you exhibit mastery over yourself and your chosen song. You've achieved fame, and I think you have the unique identity of being the only one in the country who does what you do. In light of that, how important are awards now?
Oh, I repeat, who doesn't like to get
Yeah.
awards? But now I think it's award, an award received at this point of time would probably change its role from recognition to encouragement. Because receiving awards now just makes you realize that you're on the right path.
Okay.
After reaching a particular, I feel, after reaching a particular level where you have a lot of people appreciating you, you've had a good amount of time in the career. Receiving an award or being nominated even for an award gets you to realize that, okay, what's happening, or the work being done is being appreciated, or we're on the right on track in the right direction. Yeah. And because, as I said, sometimes we do go haywire, we do go into our creative mode, but there are so many things that could go wrong. And this is just a nice way of reminding us that, okay, don't worry, you're doing fine.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, true to the adage that music recognizes no boundaries, you've collaborated with foreign artists for a while now, foreign and Indian artists. What do you like about collaboration? I'm assuming you like it because you keep doing it.
Mm-hmm.
Who have you collaborated with? What have been some of your best collaboration experiences so far?
There's this musician from Goa who once told me, don't ever get scared. This was years ago. Don't ever get scared to perform with a great artist or a foreign artist or somebody, if that artist agrees. Because good artists, or rather great artists, always like to work with others, with upcoming artists, always like to work with different types of music, people from different countries. And so whenever a foreign artist requested or communicated that they would like to collaborate, I never said no, or I never allowed fear to come in my way. Because, as I said, I've not learned music.
Right.
So I do not read music in Western music, and I don't understand much of Indian music either, because I've not learned it. So that would be a very important, or rather a very frightening thing when somebody says, oh, we would like you to collaborate with us and sing at this concert. We're going to send you the music. And I don't read music.
So is it all auditory?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. So so that's sort of a fear. But then, this gentleman's words ring in my ears. Don't get scared. Move, go ahead. And that's how I worked with different artists. So, for example, classical music, Goa University Choir, for example. Right. I collaborated with them a couple of times, and again, everything is written music. Everybody has, scores, and I don't read music. But that didn't stop me. If I can do it, and I put my cards on the table. I don't read music. If you think I can still work with you, go ahead. And it worked fine.
Yes.
Likewise, going to collaborate with an artist in Portugal, a great Fado singer, somebody who has lived and grown in the world of Fado, whose first language is Portuguese, so singing Portuguese is simple. And for me, Portuguese is the sixth language I've learned in my life. So it's that late, So, but then the language barrier, again, don't allow fear to come in your way. And so I've collaborated with artists like Mariana Bobon. She's a very good Fado singer, and she performed in Goa. I sang with her when she was here in Goa, but likewise I've sang with Katya Guerreiro and Cuca Rosetta and other artists as well. But I collaborated with her in Portugal when she had her concert. She invited me as her guest artist. And so we sang a Fado together. I sang a Fado solo. And then we did a folk song together, so we worked together. Again, there I didn't allow this Portuguese language barrier to sort of come in between. That was a wonderful collaboration. Another one was, of course, with Mestre António Cheinho, who is the ace Portuguese guitarist. He's like the ustad of Portuguese guitar.
Okay.
And I went to Portugal and we recorded, and I sang in his album called Lisboa, which was released, I think, in 2010. Yeah, we lived in 2010. And in that album, I've sung Adios Corso Paulo, as well as Rajan and Prema,
Yes.
along with Remo
Remo.
Fernandes. So with singing with Padma Shri Remo, and in the album of Maestro Anton Cheinho, was another very, very interesting collaboration. Another one, of course, something that I enjoyed and is still very close to my heart, and I hope it comes to Goa and he comes to Goa, was working with Gonzaga Coutinho. Gonzaga Coutinho is of Goan origin, born and brought up in Mozambique. He lives in Portugal. He learned Konkani very late in his life, like I learned Portuguese very late in my life. And I guess that was the connection. Of course, his daughter is of my age, and he's already a grandfather now. But lovely person, lovely musician, lovely voice. And we recorded a couple of Konkani. There's a Mando, and of course there's Claudia, and another song, old song. They rearranged the music in Portugal, and they did it very nicely. It's not yet released though. It's not yet released. But the recording and the working with him, we were working with his team, and we did concerts in Porto as well as in Lisbon.
Okay.
So that whole project was also very nice. It's always nice to work with artists, and especially when they come from a different place.
I would imagine so, especially since you carry so much of what we are in the music elsewhere. That confluence really makes it nice. No?
Yeah, it's really nice.
Yeah. Now, you've traveled all over the world. You've brought music to spellbound audiences. So what are some of your best memories, some of the best audiences that you've ever had?
I think all my audiences are lovely. But some really memorable ones. There was this concert in Teatro Tivoli, which is a very old concert hall in central Lisbon. I think it's very close to Marquês de Pombal. It's like really central.
Okay.
And as a child, I always had this vision of being on stage and singing to an audience or an auditorium that had levels.
Like an amphitheater.
Like an amphitheater. Not just an amphitheater, but with balconies.
Okay.
That the ones that you see in
Real
movies,
grandiose ones,
in fairy
yes.
tales,
Yeah.
exactly. And the first time I ever had that privilege was in Teatro Tivoli. And it was a beautiful auditorium, very old, very traditional and very respected in Portugal. I went to sing 2 fados, and my trip was just the weekend. So I went from Goa for a weekend and I was flown back. It was a very short trip, but just for that concert. It was called The Voyage of Fado, and they wanted to express that Fado has traveled around the world, and including India. And so I was the Indian counterpart. That was a beautiful concert because the audience was an excellent audience, a very, very elite, beautiful crowd. And of course the auditorium, when I stood on the stage, I was like, okay, another dream came true. But then there was also another concert that I had in Singapore, and this was in 2011. It was called Festival of Voyages again.
Okay.
This was by the Singapore Museum,
Okay.
organized by them. And I had taken my musicians, and we were representing Goa, India. So we did Goan music and Fado both together.
Okay.
And there was this one, so it was a festival of 2 days. And the night in between, they wanted to do they had a beautiful idea. Because for the festival, there were artists from all over the world. From Europe, there was a group from Iran. There were some ladies from northern European countries, and it was Estonia or some of those countries. And it was a very nice idea because there were lots of lady artists that year.
Okay.
So the idea they came up with was a lullaby. So at midnight, they had on the main stage, which was gigantic because they had a performance which involved 3 cranes, the huge cranes, because they had these trapeze artists, and it was a huge performance. So the stage was huge, and I would say about 5 to 6 times Kala Academy stage, if you want to compare. The indoor stadium, the indoor stage that we have, if you put it this way, it was probably 5 of it. It was that huge. Because in that trapeze artist performance, there was a jeep, there was a car, there was a lot of things that had to come on that stage. It was a huge stage. So the idea of the lullabies was to get all the lady artists from different parts of the world who were part of that festival to sing a lullaby from their land at midnight.
Okay.
And just voice, because lullaby usually is not accompanied with instruments. You just sing to a child and put the child to sleep. So, so the other groups, all the other groups had more than one lady.
Okay.
And I was the only one where I was alone. So I climbed on that stage and remember the feeling, because when we did a sound check, it was okay, it was loud music. And this stage was at a junction.
Okay.
So there were about 5 lanes that would, and there was a huge circle in front of the stage of traffic. And all that barricaded for the festival. It's about 3,000 odd people there. An open space, because the buildings were far away since it was a junction. And the museum behind us. And so the sound check was okay in the evening, but at midnight they put the main sound on. And I remember I was singing Dol Mujhe Bhai, lullaby in Konkani. When I started singing, I was hit with the sound. And I actually took a step behind, because I didn't, the sound check was only with monitors, so I didn't hear the full sound, And that was like a wow feeling. And pin drop silence. 3,000 people were all listening to a lullaby in Konkani, not understanding a word of it, because there was just one boy who was from Goa, a classmate of mine.
Okay.
And it was really nice, that feeling of, that whole space. It really felt like the baby had gone to sleep.
I can just imagine, because so many parts of the world, unlike India, at that time of the night, are quiet.
Absolutely.
Completely silent. So I can just visualize that.
And you finish the lullaby, and then there's this uproar, and there's this whole applause of all these people. It's like, wow, it was very nice. Yeah.
Now, many musicians talk about the creative process in the making of an album. You've released 4. Could you tell us about your process, the journey, the inspirations, the joys? I'm assuming there are pains along the way as well. How does that go?
Well, the first two that were recorded just happened.
Okay.
These are the solo albums we're talking about, because prior to this I've sung in other people's albums, whether it's in Konkani or even some English numbers in local Goan productions.
Okay.
But when I went to Portugal in 2008, I was already singing Fado, and I was already singing Fado in the casas do Fado, in the places where Fado is sung in Portugal. I made friends with a few musicians from there. And many a times I would face the problem here in Goa of not having musicians to accompany me the day I needed them, because they're all busy musicians. They're very few and they're all occupied. So that's something that I expressed there. And they said, so why don't you record music and take like a minus track, like a karaoke, to your key and your pitch and the way you sing the Fado, so that you can sing wherever you want, just play the music. And that idea actually made sense. In one way it didn't, because when you sing Fado, it's nice to have the music live.
Yeah, you interact.
Yeah, it's that sort of a music form. It's not something that, it's not like a pop song you can, just do karaoke with it. I mean, you can, but it's not the same. Yeah. It doesn't feel the same. But any which case, they all offered their help and they said, let's do this. And we went into a studio, we recorded 10 tracks in half a day or something like that. It was just for the minus tracks, right? It was just recorded. And my voice was also recorded and done. And I did use those tracks a few times, but it never felt right. I'm not very much of a recorded music person. I prefer live musicians with me. Sometimes it doesn't happen, but whenever, 90% of the times it's live music with me. So I brought those tracks, and I brought the track with my voice, and 2 years that was just sitting in my cupboard, because I used to use, I'd recorded it only for minus tracks actually.
Right.
Till the label Rock and Raga approached me, and don't you have any recordings in Portuguese? Because by then I was already singing Fado here and there. And I said, I have this one particular thing, if you would like to listen to it. And he gave it a listen and he liked it. And he said, why don't you release this? I'll release it for you. And that's how Saudades the Fado 1 was released
Okay.
in Goa. So it's actually, it wasn't planned to be an album. And that's how for 2 years it just stayed indoors. And it was released in 2010.
Okay.
Another accident was Melodious Goa. Because I used to go to Portugal very often. I went to Macau, I went to the Gulf, and I met the Goan communities there. And all of them were nostalgic, and all of them missed old songs, especially the folk songs, Dulpaj, Mando, Dekni, and they didn't have recordings of that.
Okay.
So, so they said, we would like this music. For example, I went to Casa de Goa in Portugal, where all the Goiacars very, very traditionally have the abaju torop, you know, the pan baju for Mando. They do dekni, they teach small children how to dance, Aun Saiba Poltori Veta, and all that.
Okay.
But when they asked me to sing a Konkani song and I sang a Lorna Chris Perry hit, it was a bouncer
Really?
to many of them because they come from a different era. That's the music they like. You know, the Konkani pop to some of them doesn't make a connect, you know.
Yes.
So that's when I realized that there was this void. There was this music that they wanted and it wasn't there for them. So one particular trip to Portugal, I just, in 4 days, I planned, I chalked out the list of songs, I got the musician, booked the studio, recorded, sent it to Bombay, got the copies done. In about 10 days, the album was ready and I took it off to Portugal basically for these Goan Konkani,
diaspora there.
yeah, that, you know, they wanted this Konkani music there. And that's how, and then incorporated 4 old Portuguese songs, which, believe me, are hardly sung in Portugal today. But they're sung very much in Goa.
In Goa.
So it was 4 of these old Portuguese songs and Konkani Mando, Dulpod. I made medleys of Dulpod so they could dance to it. And that was Melodious Goa, which was only, I mean, meant for this particular crowd, which later on got launched in Goa, much later, I think in 2014. And it got a response that I never expected. I mean, who wants to buy an album of Aun Saiba Baltari Mehta when everyone can sing that here in Goa? Okay, but it received a beautiful response. So that was Melodious Goa. Ugdas was planned. Ugdas was an album of old hits, and I wanted to put together hits, pop hits of in Konkani that were from 4 different music composers. So it was Alfred Rose, it was Chris Perry, Frank Fernand and Wilfie. So I got songs by all 4 composers, and that also received a very good response. And then it was time for another Portuguese Fado album, and so that's the Fado 2, believe me. That's where the hard work started now.
Really?
Till then everything was on a platter. So that's the Fado 2 took 4 years to be released.
Oh.
Because like Saudades the Fado 1, the music is recorded in Portugal.
Okay.
And here the difference was my voice was recorded in Goa.
Oh.
But for the music to get recorded, it took me one of my trips. So one particular year, we recorded the Portuguese guitar and the viola. That's the bass or the accompanying instrument. And we were going to record the acoustic bass. But the acoustic bass musician was not available and my trip was up and I had to come home. So the project was lying in the studio there for another year. So the second year when I went back, we recorded the acoustic bass and I heard my voice and it didn't sound right in many places. So I said, let me dub my voice. And the day we recorded the acoustic bass, everything was fine. The next day I went to record my voice, the system crashed. And it was time to come home. The third year I returned back to record my voice. The studio owner was not well. Nothing could be done. I brought the files to Goa. In the 4th year, I recorded my voice in Goa. And every time I would record, now in Goa, there was nobody around to correct if I had mispronounced something or sung it in a wrong way. So I would dub, take a demo, send it off to Portugal to this gentleman who would listen to it, and then he would send it back, then go back to the studio for corrections. So it took 4 years, so that's the Fado 2. And those 4 years just went, you know.
Clearly a lot of pain for that one.
A lot of pain for that one, yeah, but
well worth it.
Yeah, well worth it.
Well worth
yeah.
it. So on an average, you've released one album every 2 years.
Sort of, yeah.
So we're around the time when we should see another one. 2016, I think, was the last one.
Yeah, 2006. There was another album that was released in between. It was again a collaboration. It was called Fado Raga, but it's not released by me.
Okay.
But then I was doing the Portuguese section, the Fado section, and Praveen Gaonkar was doing the Indian section. So that was a fusion that we had done.
Okay.
It was launched by Fado Goa.
Okay.
A few years back, I think in 2012.
Okay.
Right now I'm working on something, and it's also going to be a fusion with Indian sounds. And we had a couple of concerts with that, and it was nicely appreciated. Yes. Yeah, people liked it. So yeah,
you've
so that's going on.
You've looked at
the flute, the santoor. Yeah, I've already worked with tabla, sitar. Yeah, so I'm trying to go a little more adventurous this time with instruments from India, because we have such beautiful instruments in our country, such lovely sounds, especially folk. Yes. You know, folk instruments, because Fado is a urban folk. It's not classical. It's not general folk, but it has an element of folk in it. So that would be nice. And I'm trying to bring those sounds into the Fado.
Okay.
Yeah, so that'll probably be the next.
Great. So for somebody who isn't familiar with Fado, what would you recommend as a good starting point to listen to? Is there a particular song or an album that you believe embodies it, but is also easy enough to initiate a novice?
I would suggest that before going to the internet or even CDs, try to attend a good Fado live performance.
Okay.
Because it's there that you will fall in love with the Fado. When you perform or you watch the Fado or you attend the Fado being performed live, that's when you will actually enjoy or like the genre, if you've never been introduced to it.
That is true. It worked exactly that way in my case. Because when so from I remember back from my childhood, when my grandmother would play Amalia's LPs back at home, it was nice. And then I said, okay, somewhere in my 30s, I said, let's listen. And I went online, and I didn't like what I heard. And I said, okay, Amalia, because she's the one point of reference and whatever. But I found it too rough for my liking, too harsh. And then I attended the live ones when you started Fado in the City last year. And that's when I fell in love with it. So exactly like you said, it does work that way.
It does work that way.
It does work that way.
It does. It's like even Indian classical. If you listen to about 4 hours of Indian live classical performance, you fall in love with it.
That's true.
You know, so that would be my suggestion. Of course, if you do not have the opportunity, then I would always recommend listening to Amalia. But listening to Amalia of the 60s and 70s, because she was born in 1920. So at that point of time, she must have been in her 50s or 40s, so. 50s. Yeah, so that was still a good age to sing. The later recordings, which are more because it was easier to record and save files later, with age, voices always get old, and so it's not really, her best. Of course, it is challenging to be singing on a stage at that age, but it's not her best. So I would recommend albums that she sang or fados that she sang, anything in between from the 50s to the 70s.
Okay.
If you do not listen to any classical music at all, then I would suggest that you listen to modern fadishtas, modern fado singers. For example, Marisa or Carminho, or you could also listen to Anamora. There are many of them, the younger ones. So if you go on YouTube, you'll see the color videos.
That's true. Yes.
And the black and white would be Amalia. Yeah. So that way. But I would still say, try to get a live fado. a good live Fado performance, and then decide whether you like the music form.
Okay, great. You recently traveled to the Holy Land. Now that's a trip that most people plan to make once in a lifetime. But you traveled for a different reason, didn't you? Tell us about that.
Lucky me.
Lucky you, really.
Yeah, it's a dream. It's a dream to go to the Holy Land, and it was my dream. Sometime in my lifetime, I would like to go. I have friends that have been to the Holy Land, and it was like it's a dream. It's like a fairy tale. It's all put together. It's unbelievable. And 2018 July, I was invited to the Holy Land to sing the Fado. So I had 2 concerts, one in Bethlehem and one in Jerusalem. We lived there in both these places. The concert in Bethlehem was on the Star Street, which is the street on which Saint Joseph took Mother Mary seated on the donkey, hunting for a place for baby Jesus to be born. And so the stage was set up at a junction on the Star Street. So at a turn, and if you follow that turn and go down, you reach the Square of Nativity and the Church of Nativity, where the place of
where the manger
birth, where the manger is, yes, the manger square and Church of Nativity, and that's where Christ was born. So that was like about 500 meters from where I was singing. So I was facing the church and singing, and it's like it was very emotional, not only for me but for my musicians as well. One of them had already been there. Dr. Allen had already gone with his family, but Carlos and Orlando and me, for us it was the first time. So everything was unbelievable. Are we really where Mother Mary was sitting on the donkey and she went this street? Is this the place? It was like everything. And then we went to see the place where the angel appeared to the shepherds, so the shepherd's field. We saw, I mean, everything. It was beautiful, really beautiful, Bethlehem. And then we went to Jerusalem, and we did the whole Stations of the Cross, the whole path.
Via Dolorosa.
Yeah, Via Dolorosa. And we reached the church, and it was unbelievable. The tomb. We saw Mother Mary's tomb. Yeah. So it was like everything, you know. It was like wow. And of course we were very well guided. There was a very nice guide with us. He showed us the place from where it is believed that Mother Mary ascended. There was and they took us to a church, a shrine where they believe that Jesus Christ ascended. Of course, there are different faiths there, and there's a little. Some of the data is a little. You have the Orthodox Church saying one thing. You have the Roman Catholic Church. That doesn't matter. It is somewhere in this place.
Yes.
That's what we summarized at the end. So it was beautiful. Both the concerts went well. Bethlehem was more for the locals and the tourists that were there. So people passing by would just stop and sit and listen. And the one in Jerusalem was in a university.
Okay.
So it was a very invited list, only by invitation. A lot of diplomats and a lot of university professors.
Okay.
So they also, many of them had never heard the Fado before. So it was a lovely experience. But the concerts were fine. But I mean, being able to go and sing in the Holy Land was really a dream.
Real ambassadorship, huh? Now, you're a woman of many talents. You've been internationally recognized and awarded for public speaking. You are a lawyer by qualification. You're a singer. You're a teacher of music. You can sing in 14 different languages. How would you say that all of that coalesces best to inspire you or make you who you are?
I think this whole mixture, as you said, it's not my fault, it's my parents' fault. So since they have they come from 2 different faiths. So there's a mix of religions, it's a mix of cultures, both from Goa, but from Ponda, and my mother lived most of her life in Panjim. Languages also, because my father's family at home speaks Konkani. My mother's family at home speaks Portuguese, and we at our place speak English. So there's this. So it's easy to understand different languages, easy to follow different cultures. I always was taught to appreciate everything.
Yeah.
So whether it was a food item that was made in one of the communities, or if it was music that was sung by one of the communities. I guess my whole upbringing was like that. So whether it was an Indian attire or it was a Western outfit, both could be beautiful and both could be equally bad as well. So, you know, so that sort of, my entire upbringing was that way. So I guess I just got used to, you know, not sticking with only one, or avoiding experimentation, or, you know, trying out something new. My parents were very active in Rotary.
Okay.
And so we used to travel a lot. And when we went to Karnataka, we were made to eat whatever was served. So if it was idli or dosa or appams or chutney, or every day the same thing, no omelets and no bread and butter, no cheese, we ate whatever was served. So whether it was food, whether it was anything, you know, it sort of, my mind grew that way. The other thing that my parents always, or rather more my father, brought us up, me and my brother, as equals. So I never grew with that fear that, you know, this is something I should not try, or, you know, before I try, maybe I should ask somebody, or, you know, for reasons like I come from a town, or I'm an Indian, or I'm a girl, or I'm not qualified. Any of these things, you know. So there was never this. He never allowed me to believe that, you know, don't do this, it's not for you, try something else. No, just do. And it was the same treatment for both of us. So for me, many a times people ask me, how is it when you work with only men as your musicians? For me, they're my musicians. Gender doesn't matter.
Correct.
They're not there because they're men. I'm not there because I'm a woman. I'm there because I'm a singer, they're musicians.
Correct.
So, you know, things like that. So, so I guess that really made me move and experiment and try, and so there was never this, you know, holding back sort of a thing. And so I would say blame my parents for it.
No, I understand completely. I come from the same background.
Exactly.
And there is nothing which you should question, should I be doing this or not? Apart from the right and wrong of it.
Definitely.
Everything is fair game.
Yeah, exactly.
You know? And I think that's one of the huge advantages of mixed parentage, because it makes life and growing up a lot of fun and extremely interesting.
That's true. That's true.
Very, very much
That's
so.
true.
Now, not long ago, you co-founded a program for people to learn Fado. I was going to say young people, but not just young people,
No,
young,
anybody.
old, everybody. How's the response been? Do you see this as seeding the art form in Goa to stay?
That's the dream.
Yeah.
That's the vision. That's the idea. 2016, I had a project called Fado in the City, which was a series of 10 concerts of Fado all over Goa. The idea was there was a lot of Fado happening, youngsters singing Fado for competitions, and then throughout the year there was no connect with the Fado. There were a lot of people who liked the Fado, had heard Fado in Portugal, or had albums and collections of Fado, but were not coming on stage to sing. So, and there were many people who had read the word Fado, had read articles about me on the newspaper, but they didn't know what it was.
Okay.
So the idea of Fado in the city meant that Fado is happening in the city, like somewhere close by there's Fado happening, was to bring Fado to people who never went to the Fado, who had never heard the Fado, and to take Fado to places where usually Fado was not performed. I mean, we've had Fado concerts in Kala Academy. We've had Fado in Sidadugo every month for the last so many years. But places like Sunaprant, or places like restaurants, particular restaurants, where you do not usually associate with the Fado. So the clients of that restaurant might have never heard the Fado before. And the idea was to do that. And we wanted to take Fado to people who didn't speak Portuguese, because it's a music form that we want you to listen to.
Right.
We're not checking whether you understand every word of it or not.
Right.
And it was very well received. So the next step would be to go to colleges and go to schools and, you know, expose that category of people to the Fado. But in between this whole project of Fado, the Goa came up. And we started classes because there was a lot of interest. People wanted to learn. They had attended Fado in the city. When I asked, there would be a show of hands. How many of you don't speak the language? So many hands went up. How many of you are attending Fado for the first time live? Many hands would go up. So there was this interest from people from Goa that were not exposed to the Fado directly but had liked it. So that's how we started the classes. And in 2017, we had 4 batches, 200 plus students.
Wow.
2 batches in Margao, 1 in Panjim, 1 in Vasco. And now the thing was, there was no reference because there is no school of Fado in Portugal itself, because it is believed that you are born to sing the Fado. You cannot be taught to sing the Fado.
Okay.
You can improve, but so there's no school, there's no classes, there are no grades. And therefore, we had to create the whole module.
Okay.
Because we have other barriers. It's not just whether you're born to sing the Fado or not, but whether you can pronounce words in a foreign language, whether you can, be able to adapt, to understand the history of Fado. And so we designed the module, and it included theory as well as singing.
Okay.
So they learned about the history, evolution, main Fado singers, instruments, varieties, styles, traditional Fado, rules of traditional Fado, which are things that we many a times in Goa do not know. We just know Amalia, we know Fado sung by her, and we know Fado.
That's true.
But there's so much more that goes with it. So all this was sort of put together as syllabus and exams for the students. And we welcomed everybody, whether you knew the language, you didn't know the language, whether you could sing, you could hold a tune or not, it didn't matter. Because we believe that we were trying to find singers to sing the Fado, but then we also need an audience. Because if we're going to train people to sing the Fado, they need to sing in front of a learned audience. Not somebody who's just going to say, yes, you sing beautifully. Then they sang a nursery rhyme in Portuguese. So, so we needed to have an informed audience. So we always welcome anybody to the classes. Okay. And I think it worked really well, because we're still working with the 4 batches. And the students then get qualified to a second level, which is like master classes. Okay. So from the first level where they can sing Fado, we bring them to a level where they can sing Fado at a family function, a family wedding, a school function, a college function. Okay. Those who qualify to the second level, then we polish them to go for competitions, for concerts. Tomorrow, if they travel to Portugal, they can just enter any Caso do Fado and say, I would like to sing this Fado, and they can sing. Yeah. So that's the level we bring them to at the end of the second level. There are just 2 levels that we've designed. Okay. And we're working on that. So it's nice because we received a beautiful response. Okay. A huge group. We had 35 students in both the batches, each batch in Margao. In Panjim, we started with about 50. We ended up with about 30 something. Okay. And in Vasco, we started with about 70 students. Wow. Yeah, it was the church hall. It was okay. It felt like mass classes. But very, very interested, very enthusiastic batch in Vasco.
And they stuck through?
And they stuck through. 55 of them answered the exam. Yeah, 55 or 56.
And the exams are theory or practice?
Both. Okay. Both, yeah. So there would be a written objective question and a little theory or subjective answers. And then there would be an external panel. I would not sit there because I taught them. So there would be a language expert, a musician, and a person overall too. At that time, the project was initiated by and supported by the Taj group of hotels. Okay. So we would always invite somebody from the Taj group to sit and evaluate. Because
Fado was part of their CSR.
It was part of their CSR. That's what they were doing. Okay. So that's the support we received, and we really boosted the whole move of this, courses and study. It was nice because. It was new for us. We were just, we were trying it out because we didn't have a module to refer to. Yeah. That was the biggest challenge, and it worked well. So now at least we know how to move ahead. Okay. Yeah. And it's nice because we've got good talent in Goa.
Yes. And I think a population that appreciates it in idea and would like to be able to appreciate it practically as well.
Yeah.
So what's a regular working day like for you, and what would you choose to do on a day off?
Regular working day, it's not really, there's no pattern, there's no fixed pattern. So it could be anything like leaving home at 7 in the morning and reaching home the next morning at 4. Okay. Or it could be a lazy morning, get up at 10. Okay. So there's no fixed pattern, it depends on the schedule. Performances, many a times we do not realize an artist on stage. We just see the person come, sing and go home or go off stage. But we don't realize that, like for example, if there's a performance and I'm singing at 9 o'clock at night, 9 to 10 is my slot, say for a food festival or something in Goa. I would need to be there by 5 in the evening.
Sound check.
So that sound check, check the sound, check the stage, check everything, see that's in order. To be there at 5, I would need to leave my house at least an hour and a half in it. So that's 3:30 in the afternoon I've left. So that means after lunch I've not really napped. And then post the performance gets over at 10, 10:30. And then you meet people, the organizers, the fans, you have to meet them, everyone, photo session. And then there's dinner and whatever. And by the time I leave, it's about 12. So I'm home by about 1:30 for a performance of 1 hour on stage. So that's 3:30 in the afternoon to 1:30 in the morning.
Yeah.
So so it could be something like that. And add to it, instead of 3:30, leave the house at 7 in the morning because you have to go to a function to be a chief guest somewhere, and after that you have to go to a studio and do a recording. So it's fun. So there are some crazy days where it's really hectic, but sometimes they're quite lazy. Some days are fine, and on lazy days I just like to be at home.
Okay.
Again, many people ask me, what do you do in Ponda when you're alone? I stay at home. There's so much to do. I've got my pets, I've got my parents, I've got the garden. There's so much. You're home. There's so much to do always.
Music for us is a stress buster. Well, for most of us. What's your stress buster?
For me, stress buster is doing something creative, either cooking or some art, or it could just be playing with the pets at home.
Okay.
I've realized that doing something with my hands
Really?
is a stress buster for me.
Interesting.
So whether it's trying something new in the kitchen or making some do-it-yourself projects. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, if ever there were to be the life and times of Sonia Shirsat,
If ever.
if ever, how would it read? What would you want to be remembered for most, apart from, of course, the Fado?
I don't think that would happen. But anyway, if it does,
So many dreams have come true. You never know.
Yeah, you never know.
You're just keeping
This hasn't
checking
been
them
my
off
dream,
the
though.
list. So
this hasn't been a dream. But if ever, then maybe I just like to be remembered as a good human being. I think that would be more important to me than anything else. Everything else comes after that.
okay.
Yeah.
Lots of excitement.
Lots of excitement, a good life, a happy life, try to be a righteous life, a helpful, challenging also. Yeah.
Somebody that your parents would be proud to own.
Yeah, I think so.
I think that kind of sums it up for many of us.
I
No?
think so.
Well, it's been a real pleasure having you here. I'm sure you know that all of Goa's love and support is with you wherever you go,
Thank you so
whatever you
much.
do. We wish you well always.
Thank you.
I think we should all say thank you for the music. But if you are so inclined, then could you sing something for us?
Definitely, why
A
not?
particular favorite or?
So then this is my all-time favorite Fado, and it's called Fria Claridad, and it's nice because I relate with it. Fria Claridad means cold light. Usually lights are associated with warmth, happiness, festivities, good times. But if those lights are of a huge city where you're all alone, walking on the streets all by yourself, those are not happy lights, so they're cold lights. So that's what the Fado is about. No meio da claridade daquele tão triste dia, grande, grande era a cidade e ninguém me conhecia. Grande, grande era a cidade e ninguém me conhecia. Acordei e a claridade fez-se maior e mais fria. Grande, grande era a cidade ninguém me conhecia. Grande, grande era a cidade e ninguém me conhecia.
Thank you so much. That was
Thank
lovely,
you.
and
Thanks so
I
much,
think
Runa.
it's so evocative and so true of life in general.
Yeah, it is.
It is. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you've had a lovely time spent with Sonia Shirsat. She's given you tips on what you need to go and look up in case you're interested in the Fado. And I'm sure I speak on behalf of all of you when I wish her well all along her way. Thank you so much.
Thank you
It's
so
been
much.
lovely
My
to have
pleasure.
you here.
Pleasure's
Thank
mine.
you.
Thank you. Thank you.